Namaste. My name is Arunjith and I am the director of Matha Ayurveda Hospital and Pancharma Center. I am trying to explain a very common doubt from our patients before coming for admission, that whether they need to bring a bystander or attender with them during their treatment. So our answer is, for treatment purpose, there is no need for a bystander or an attender. The entire treatment process will be handled by our team. Now, when is a bystander mandatory? A bystander is mandatory when the patient is vulnerable. So that is the only point where the bystander is mandatory. Now the question is, when do we consider a patient as vulnerable? Now the answer is, there are mainly 3 or 4 situations where we consider a patient as vulnerable. The first situation is if the patient is a child. Now the second situation is if the patient is a senior citizen. Now the third situation is if the patient is unable to do his or her own daily activities. If they need a person's support to do their daily activities, then the patient is considered vulnerable. Now the fourth situation, if a patient is not vulnerable by any of the 3 cases mentioned before, also if the treating doctor feels that the patient is vulnerable, it may be due to any condition that the treating doctor decides, then also we consider the patient as vulnerable. So if a patient is vulnerable, or if the treating doctor decides the patient is vulnerable, we will definitely ask that the patient needs to come with a bystander. Okay. Now next thing is, who can we allow as a bystander? Under normal circumstances, we allow only either a spouse or a child or a parent or a sibling as a bystander. Other relations or any other person to be a bystander, they need to get permission from the treating doctor. So it needs to be informed, and only after getting the permission will we allow a person who does not fall into this category to stand as bystander. Okay. Now, and another thing is the treatment duration. If your treatment duration is long, you may feel bored, or you may want a good company or your spouse to be with you. Then in those cases, do definitely bring a bystander, but it is not mandatory. Only in the conditions that I have mentioned, where it is mandatory, will we say strictly it is needed. Otherwise, it is the choice of the patient.